Hello and welcome. My name's Andy Crook. I'm your host for this training topic all about sales systems. My mission is to help garage owners become more successful in business. How I do that is most weeks I go live with a training topic on one of the 5 pillars of business as I see it. This week we're in the systems pillar and we're looking at sales systems and more specifically the closer framework. Now, I guess what we're going to be talking about today might make a few of you uncomfortable because we're talking about sales. And I know what you're thinking. And I'm not saying that this isn't true for a lot of technicians. We don't particularly like being sold to as people. And as technicians, we don't really identify as a salesperson. I certainly don't. But here's the truth. If you talk to customers or if you recommend repairs, if you answer the phone or you quote prices, you are in sales, whether you like it or not. And the better you get at it, the more profit and stability you'll bring to your business. So today we're unpacking a sales method that's built for real people having real conversations, not slick double glazing tactics. It's called the closer framework. And I'm going to break it down into sort of garage relevant chunks that you can use from today. So why do you need a sales systems? In my experience, when I speak to garages, what I find is most of us sell by accident or out of necessity, or they wait for the customer to ask. And this presents a missed opportunity that is probably costing thousands and thousands of pounds worth of profit. Because let's face it, most garages are only doing the work requested of. Now, in a previous training talk, I talked about selling painkillers and vitamins, and that packaging painkillers with vitamins is a great idea. Using the closer framework, we can make upselling more conversational, natural, and less pressurized. When the customer presents their car for an MOT, essential repairs, or even a service, having a sales system framework simply makes upselling your vitamins bolted onto the painkiller easier. Without a framework, your team might get flustered, or they might tend to over-explain, or, and worst probably of them all, is they simply don't feel confident enough to ask. But when you use a system, even a simple one, suddenly you sound more confident, you can build trust, and you can guide the customer. And that's what wins sales. So what is the closer system? So the acronym CLOSER stands for the C, clarity, L, label, O, overview, S, sell, E, explain, R, reinforce. So let's go through each one with a typical example, and we'll use the timing belt in this case. Because let's be honest, most people don't want to spend upwards of £500 on a timing belt. They may have come in for an MOT or a service, but because they've hit the age or the mileage, you have the opportunity, or some might say the duty, to inform them they should also have their timing belt changed. This is the classic painkiller and vitamin sales scenario. And your job is to make them feel informed, confident that they're making the right decision. But if you just say, do you want us to do the timing belt while it's here? It's 655 quid all in, mate. You've missed the opportunity to serve and to sell. And this is where the closer system comes in. It's simple, it's structured, and doesn't make you sound like a double glazing salesman from 1987. So let's start with the C, clarify. And this is probably the most important step. You ask questions to find out more about the customer and their car. And what you're doing here is you're building rapport. For example, you could say, are you planning on keeping it for a while? Have you ever had a timing belt done before? Do you understand what can happen if you ignore recommended replacement intervals? What you're doing here is you're gathering context, because someone selling the car next week doesn't want the same solution as someone who's planning to keep the car for a few more years. The goal is to understand them, not to jump straight to quoting. When people feel heard, they begin to trust you more. And when they trust you, they're more likely to buy from you. So asking questions shows you care. Then what you're going to do is move on to the L, which is label. So you take what you've learned and you label the issue. It's time to reflect the concern back. So in this case, you could say, so you want to avoid a nasty bill down the road. Or, so you plan to keep the car and you want it to be reliable and not leave you stranded. Or you want to maintain the service history for maximum resale. You're naming the pay, labeling, making it clear that you understand what's at stake. You're not diagnosing the car, you're diagnosing concern, customers' concern. And by saying it out loud, the customer hears their own worries reflected back at them. This builds emotional buy in. You're not just offering a service, you're solving a problem or a fear. Labeling clarifies the pain. So you can move on then to the O, which stands for overview. And this is where you take a moment to show empathy and position yourself as the expert. So you could say something like this. The thing with timing belts is they don't get much warning. They either work or they fail. And when they fail, it's so expensive, it's often game over. Often end up scrapping the vehicle. You're not scaring, you're educating. You're showing that you've seen it all before. You're taking control of the situation, and then you're not leaving the customer guessing. And this is where having a professional tone comes in. You just give them the facts. You don't exaggerate or play down any issues. You just state it as it is. And the overview provides the customer with context. And the best method to use is a short story. And a short story could come from a case study, typically of a previous customer who elected, in this case, not to have a timing belt replacement, and how it ended for them. And you could even use the example of someone who said they'd want their timing belt changed. It then, a few years later, snapped unexpectedly. It was recovered to you. They were faced with a huge bill, which meant they had to get rid of the car. Now, that is just facts stated in the form of a story, which brings them back to context. So they now understand you're not just upselling them a timing belt, you're providing longevity for the vehicle. You're going to avoid them a potential breakdown. You're positioning yourself as the expert. So the first three stages of the closer framework, clarifying, labeling, and the overview, they are what we use to set up the sale. Because by showing you care with questions, clarifying with labels, and providing context with your overview, that short story, what you're going to do is you're going to see if the customer is interested. Because you're only going to move forward to the next part of the framework if you believe the customers are ready, if they're likely to say yes. Otherwise, you're going to keep the conversation going. You might ask a few more questions. You might relabel the concern until you're starting to get a little bit more buy-in. You're going to probably give them some more context through a story, because not all customers will buy the upsell, and that's to be expected. So here, the key is keeping it casual. Keep the conversation going. The aim is to win trust and not to be pushy. So if the customer is clearly not going to go ahead with a time about change, what you can do here now is you can ask their permission to get back in touch with them at a later date to see if they want it done then, to check in again. So that you know that you're making sure that you're positioning yourself, that you're recommending the timing belt gets done because it's due on age or mileage, and that it should be done, and it's probably a good idea to be done if the customer fits the criteria, they're keeping the car, etc., etc. And then what you're going to do is you ask them, because they're clearly not going to go for it, you can just simply ask them, can we get in touch at a later date? Because then what you're doing, you're reinforcing the importance of this. You're not just allowing them to brush you aside. So that's the way of keeping it conversational. You won't move on to the next part of the framework because it's not going to end in a sale. But if the customer is agreeing with you, and certainly if they're openly agreeing with you, you can move on to the second part of the framework, which is what I call the sales part. And that is the S, sell, the outcome, and not the word. This is where I would say most garages fall down. We tend to say it's an additional £685 to replace the timing. And that's how we approach the sale. Because you'll notice in the first part, we didn't actually say exactly what it is we're going to do or how much it cost. We found out some information about the customer, what their concerns were, and then we give them an overview of what the process or what that service that we're selling provides for them, if you like, the benefits. But now, when we get onto the sales bit, what if we were to say, well, get this sorted for you today so you can drive confidently, knowing the belt's good for another 5 years or 60,000 miles, or whatever the interval is, with no surprises, no breakdowns, and no big unexpected bills. You're selling reliability, confidence, and convenience. Remember, people don't buy services, they buy solutions to their problems. So once you understand what their problem or their concern is, you can sell the outcome, not the work. But you need to then move on to the next stage, which is E, which is explain. But once they're nodding, explain exactly what you're doing and why. But keep it simple. We'll fit a full timing belt, replace the water pump, coolant, and the auxiliary belt. We only use manufacturer's parts, which will come with a 3-year warranty. No jargon, no waffle, just clarity and confidence. People don't buy when they're confused. They buy when they feel safe. And this step removes doubt and reduces objections. In the explain section, you can also give them the price. Probably a good idea to tell them how much it's going to be before they make a decision. At this point, they're either going to accept or not your offer. So this is where between the selling the outcome, not the work, and the explanation, once you've got them agreeing and they think, you can see that you're offering that solution to their problem rather than selling them something. This is when they either accept or reject your offer. So you've made the offer from the selling the outcome and the explanation. And then what you're going to do is finally, the R in closer is reinforce. Finally, you reinforce the decision to go ahead. You validate. You made a good call. Better get it sorted now than have it go at you on the motorway at 70 miles an hour. Or we'll take care of it. As soon as it's ready, we'll give you a ring. This simple step increases confidence and reduces buyer remorse. It also primes them to return the next time they need something. Because what you're saying, you're congratulating them almost by making the decision, the one that you've recommended based on age and mileage. Because remember, if the thing about upselling your products and services, you should only be upselling things that you truly believe are going to serve the customer. You're not doing this just to make money. Actually providing them with a service or a product that's going to reduce the chances of breaking down or whatever it is. You're serving the customer, selling to the customer. And that's what makes this a little bit easier. So often when I talk to people who feel a little bit, for whatever reason, reluctant to get into sales or to try to sell or upsell to customers, is I said, think of yourself as a sales consultant. You're going to find out something about by asking the questions. You're going to then, once you know what it is that they're worried about or what their intentions are, you show you care, you clarify by labeling, and then you give context. And if you think the customer then is agreeable, then you move into the sale. Because being good at sales isn't magic, it's practice. And it's about confidence, clarity, and effective communication. So this week's atomic action is to choose one type of vitamin, what I'll call is an upsell opportunity, such as a timing belt, and practice the closer framework with your service advisor or a tech and find out how a conversational style selling system works. And then if the best way to do it is set up a camera and have a conversation and practice with the people who are most likely to be trying to do the upsell. And then when you look back at it, ask yourself, did we ask questions to show we care? Did we clarify the customer's pain? Did we label it? And then did we give an overview of the work to provide the customer context? Remember, this first section of the closer framework is the most important one, because this is the one where we start to understand the customer's needs, and then we can see if it's right to sell them on the product or services, in this case, a timing belt, if it's right, or if we think the time isn't right, but we can still say that you should be considering this, can we offer it in another time? So you're reinforcing your message. But if you think once you've got the first part of the framework down and you're ready to ask for the sale, focus on selling the outcome, buying, and then only explain what will be done and why and how much at that point. And finally, reinforce the decision. Try it on your customers because it's important to practice until it's second nature. Engage with customers more naturally when you sell. So if you did this for the next 7 days or so, you'd be amazed how much smoother and then more profitable your sales conversations become. Most garage I speak to have a sales or profit level need. Having a sales system can fix the lowest level needs of your business without you having to attract any more customers. Simply by doing more with the customers you already have and doing it better before you try anything additional. That is what I call the Atomic Success MBA. If you are unsure what your level need is, check the description for this training topic. And in there, you've got the Fix This First quiz. There's a link to it down there. If you click that, you can take a short quiz and it'll tell you what level your business is currently operating. And if you have a sales or a profit level need, learning and having a sales system will definitely help you with that. So, some final thoughts. We're not here to fleece people. We're here to serve them better. And when you can guide a customer through a clear structural sales conversation, like the C.L.O.S.E.R framework, you remove confusion, you build trust, and best of all, you increase your average invoice value. It's not about being clever. It's about caring, clarifying, and providing context before selling outcomes, and then explaining and reinforcing. Having a sales system will help you develop sales scripts that feel natural, conversational, and better serve your customers. Make sales training part of your strategy, and you'll unlock the value of upselling by selling more vitamins alongside those painkillers. So, if you think this has helped you rethink how you approach sales, do me a favor, share it with someone who owns a garage. If you own a garage, you want to find your lowest level need, check out the link in the description. It will take you to a quiz that will help you identify what to fix first. Remember, what's stopping you is starting, and if you should, you must. Thanks for listening. See you next time.